Well, I just pulled, excuse me, I just pulled my last 2 sheets of parchment paper out of the package. I had no idea I was so low, and I haven't been able to find it in a roll lately, so maybe I'll pick up some wax paper. Anyway, we're on part 2. We mixed our bread. We got it in the bowl. Now, I've got 2 loaves to put out. So, see how it's risen? It was way down here, had a bunch of room around it. So, if you hear something in the background, that's my dehydrator running. So here's what we're going to do. Now, I'm going to set it down on the paper and see how it's just kind of like a blob. I just love that. So I need to shape it into a rectangle about 8 by 11. Now these papers are 10 by 13. So what I do, and I tend to make it a little bit longer. The reason you shape it 8 wide is because you're going to roll it up on this short edge. The bread pans are 9 inches, so when you roll it up, it works out pretty good. Okay, I'm going to sprinkle just a little bit of flour on top. Okay, just a little. It rose pretty quick. It didn't take 4 hours. It only took 3. Let me see if my second batch is ready. I'll check it. Here's my second one. Ooh. Okay. I made some kind of mistake on this bread, and I don't know what it was. But I'm glad it was not the one I was showing you guys how to work on. I don't know what I did wrong. I might have measured the flour wrong, but when I put my water in, it looked like pie crust. It was crumbly. Bread is not supposed to be crumbly. See, this is a lot stiffer than that bread. So I have a feeling, I mean, it's going to be edible. It's going to be bread. And it's going to be good. It'll taste good. But it's not going to be the consistency I wanted. Now, you can use a rolling pin to do this with. I use my hands a lot. This is how I was taught. My grandma taught me to do everything by hand. That's how come it's really kind of gotten to me trying to learn to use equipment. I desperately need a really big food processor. I did discover that. I've got a great little one I was given for a gift by a person very special to me. Thank you, Melanie. And it's wonderful for what I use it for. But when I'm doing large batch, like when I'm canning, I need a really, really big. Okay. So, those look good. This is the bread pan. Okay. So when I roll it up, I'm going to have to make sure it fits. So now we let this rest just about 10 minutes. So I'm going to try pausing the video instead of just doing part 3, you know. So anyway, I'm going to pause. Okay, it's been 10 minutes. The pause worked. But things don't usually work for me. Okay, so it has rested. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to make another batch of bread is because I want cinnamon bread in the morning. Okay, so what I'm going to do, now I don't add sugar. I don't want sugar bread. I want cinnamon bread. So this loaf here, I am going to put cinnamon on. Now, I really like cinnamon. You have to figure out how much you like. Let me grab my pastry brush. Can't live without my pastry brush. I'm going to spread it around a little. Make sure it's nice and covered. You know how you buy that cinnamon swirl bread at the store? That's what this is going to look like. And you want to talk about how it smells. Oh my gosh, when it's baking, you just want to climb in the oven with it. Another one I like to do is I use my apple pie spice or my pumpkin pie spice, and I make that flavor of bread. You just put it in the middle here. Now, what I have done is I have sprayed my non-stick pans with a non-stick spray, because you want your bread to pull away from the edges. You don't want it to stick to the edges. So I'm going to do this one first. You start at the short end and you start rolling it. Yeah, your fingers are going to get oily. Guys, you can't cook without getting a little dirty, okay? It's a good dirty. It's totally different, okay, than playing with dirt. So see how I'm rolling it? And I'm pushing the sides in a bit as I go. I'm going to slide it back. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to keep going forward. I could pull the paper back, but I'm not going to. Okay. So, now, okay, I'm going to kind of squish it together a little. It will bake together, don't worry. Now, see, here's my pan. Here goes this one in the pan. I like to put that last fold down. Okay. I like it on the bottom, because if you put it on the top as it's baking, it might try to fold open. Okay, so there's one. Set it right there. Now I'm going to get the cinnamon off my hands, because this one is not a piece of cinnamon bread. This is just another good loaf of bread that I was planning to put in the freezer, but I had a friend call me and ask if they could buy a loaf of bread, and I said absolutely not. I'm giving them a loaf of bread. So I'm going to kind of punch it down a little bit. I should have done a little bit more with Mr. Cinnamon there, but I didn't. And it's nothing that's going to make that big of a difference, okay? So, same thing. I'm going to roll this one towards me. And I'm kind of tucking it a little as I go, because I like it rolled tight. I don't like it, you know, three rolls and we're done, okay? And you want your bread tight. You don't want it super loose. Okay. Now this one has a nice coat of oil on it. That one I'm worried about. That's the one I messed up on. I did something wrong, and I don't know what, and it's bothering me. But the proof is in the baking. Somebody asked me about proofing yeast. You do not need to proof instant yeast. Now, old-timey yeast cakes, you probably still do, but I don't proof yeast. Proofing yeast is putting it in hot water and letting it grow. Okay, so I'm going to kind of squish it together. Make sure it's not curved, bent, or anything. Okay. There we go. Now, this is going to be the end of part 2, because what I'm going to do now, get my oily paper out of the way, my cinnamony paper out of the way, so I can work. Okay, so here's my 2 loaves of bread, my cinnamon and my regular. I'm going to take the cloth I had covering them. They have to rise an hour. Like I said, this bread is not labor intensive, but it is time intensive. Okay? So we have an hour before we put it in the oven. So, it's 7:52 my time, so about 8:40, I'll turn my oven on to 350 degrees, because you want it at temperature when you put the bread in. You don't want it to be warming up when you put the bread in. It needs to go in at temperature, so you want your oven at 350 degrees. And then it's going to bake about 45 minutes. Last night my bread took 55 minutes. 2 weeks ago it took 40 minutes. When you tap on the top and it sounds hollow and it's nice and crunchy, that's when it's done. It's not like store-bought bread where you're going to have a thick crust and then the inside of the bread. This is good bread for kids who don't like crust, because you put it down in front of them and say, look, the crust isn't there. And I've never had a kid say no to this bread, especially that cinnamon bread. You could put sugar on it if you wanted. I don't recommend it. I don't like sugar on anything, but it's just not what I would do to my bread. So, in an hour, this should rise up about an inch and a half over the edges of the pan. So that's what you'll see next. So take a break for an hour and meet me at 7:52. I have a better idea. Meet me at 8:52.